If you were going to compare hard seltzer to a genre of music, you'd pick Americana. Now, before I get into this rant, I first want to say there are some good bands in this genre. You kind of think of like The Band being the first one of Americana, and I'm going to give you a definition of what Americana is if you don't live in the South and have no idea what I'm talking about. But there are some great bands that would come under the banner of Americana. Wilco, Jason Isbell, the 400 Unit, My Morning Jacket, of course, The Band, Steve Earle, I guess, even has an album called Americana. It just, to me, in my experiences out on the road and playing gigs, the fucking 95% of this genre is perpetrated by men who have never pleasured a woman. Now, Wikipedia describes Americana thusly. Americana, also known as American roots music. Oh, God, man, if you hear that this band is roots, just fucking stay at home and watch Netflix. Is an amalgam of American music formed by the confluence of the shared and varied traditions that make up the musical ethos of the United States. Specifically, those sounds that are emerged from the southern United States, such as folk, gospel, blues, country, jazz, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, bluegrass, and other external influences. When you hear it written like that, it sounds pretty damn cool, but here's the problem with most Americana bands. They're afraid to be anything. That is the biggest problem. I have a lot of problems that we're going to talk about today, but one of the problems I think Americana bands have is they don't know what the fuck they are. They're afraid to be too country, because more than likely, they're actually not from the South. I swear to God, Genericana has got to be labeled as cultural appropriation. So they don't want to be seen as like country. Like, God forbid that you're compared to Johnny Cash or Merle Haggard or Waylon Jennings. But if you grew up behind a gated fucking rock called Twin Oaks, you would never want to be associated with those dirty Southerners. They're afraid to be rock and roll because God forbid that you actually have fun or look like you're interested in being on stage. So, and then, they have all those other, none of them really have enough blues in them to be like, hey man, why don't you just be like Stevie Ray Vaughan? Americana bands, just stop it. Return all of the gear that you wear that looks like you just came from an Amish barn raising, and just go to Nashville with all the other Americana bands and fucking sling pancakes at IHOP, because that's about as far as you're going to go. I think Americana exists for all of the hat shops in Nashville to sell like $300, $400, $500 not quite cowboy hats. I think that Americana exists so guitar stores can sell shitty 60s harmony guitars at inflated prices. I think it may be a concerted effort between all of those industries to sell just people who just go at it half-assed, and I want to talk about it. And the reason why I've been thinking about doing this rant for a while is especially when I was on the road, and even not actually lately, I've not had to cross the paths of a band that looks like they're from, Williamsburg, New York, is the way that they perform their music on stage. It's like they're afraid to bother you. There's no oomph. There's no joy. There's even not really sad. One of the things that genre has is too many sad sack songs. And I love a good ballad. Hell, I've written a few myself. I don't know if they were good, but I definitely have written them. So it's not that I'm against that. But every fucking song is a sad sack rumination on something that I'm sure probably meant a lot to you, but you're just not doing it in a way that makes me and a lot of people give a fuck about it. You only exist because there's this light infrastructure that girds what you do, and we'll talk about the Americana Awards later. But what do these bands have against fun, or at least conviction? They come up And it feels like they just want to say, hey, here's a song I wrote. Hope you like it. Because I don't. And how am I going to get excited for your art if you're not even giving it to me in an excited way? You're the motherfucker who wrote it. Now, if you've made it this far into this rant, you may be asking me, what the fuck are you talking about? If you're from like the West Coast or like, oh no, Pacific Northwest, it's up there along with all other terrible things. But you may not know what I'm talking about. Do you know when you go to the bar and you come home and you say, the band that I just saw, they weren't really like a rock band. They weren't really like a country band. Like the bass player grabbed a banjo once. The drummer had a shaker in one hand and a mallet in the other and some brushes in his teeth. One of the guys had like the Bob Dylan harmonica bracket around him. But it also wasn't really country. They played some songs maybe sound like bluegrass, and I don't know. That's why you're the seltzer water of fucking music. You're like Sprite that gave up. And I think you can do better. Maybe that's why I'm making this video. I'm trying to help these Genericana bands do better. And that brings me to a weekend that lives in infamy. If you're from Nashville, Tennessee, and it is the weekend that the Americana Awards shows up, and they all smell each other's farts. There's so many overpriced hats and cowboy boots at this fucking thing, and usually by people with no accent whatsoever, no style. You can tell that they want to be from the South, but they've never been in a creek. You know what I mean? A lot of this music is written by like non-Southerners, and they write them like what they think we are. And it's like a touristy understanding of the landscape. And maybe that's the reason why I'm so vehemently opposed to the style or even the term Americana, because it just doesn't mean anything. You know, another thing that I don't like about it is I feel that like a lot of Americana bands, their metronomes don't go past 80. I watched a band I barred back into my bartending days a few years ago, many more than a few, and the band started out with 3 ballads. I couldn't fucking believe it. I was at this bar losing my mind. I was like, okay, look, I know you've got some suspenders on. I know you probably went to a few Gabes to figure out where you could get those. And they started with 3 ballads. How dare you? How dare you think that your pain is that interesting to give at the time it was a crowded bar, 3 ballads? I wanted to fucking self-delete. One of the biggest problems, I think, with this style is it's a bunch of people who are, again, appropriating our culture, and they don't want to be seen as too Southern, you know what I mean? And I get it. If you, the term country right now is kind of a dirty word, and I understand that because of bro country. But I tell you what, at this point, I'd rather go watch a bro country artist, because at least they know who they are and they know what they're trying to get across. They have made a conscious decision to put on their glitter britches and put a hip hop beat with a song that has a banjo about 7 miles in the distance and talk about trucks and dirt roads and all that bullshit. At least they know who they are and they know who their audience is, which also brings us back to the Americana Awards. It doesn't mean anything. They have to have so many fucking seat fillers for that ceremony, because I have never in 45 years heard someone say my favorite genre of music is Americana, because no one knows what it is, but there is a goddamn award show for it. And again, they get it's half-ass rocker, half-ass country who heard a Ralph Stanley song fucking once, got together and just blow each other and give awards to songs and records that we've never heard of. Save for Tyler Childers, who went on the Americana Awards and took a shit on him. And also, I tried to find that speech because I wanted to end this video with it, and it has been scrubbed from the internet. I think I know why. in closing, if you feel that you can't get on stage without a vest, who we all know that a vest is just the fedora for the body, or your band looks like they just got done churning butter and you have no fucking accent and all of your songs don't go past 88 beats per minute, are you being honest with yourself, or are you just mimicking the best versions of that? And of course, you can make that argument for every genre. But where I think this might be a geographical problem, because where I'm from, we have Americana bands under every goddamn rock. And all of their pictures, all their 8x10s are taken beside a rock or beside a creek. And most of them had to take their North Face fleece off and put on their fucking half-ass cowboy hat to do so. Americana, do better. Or just don't do it at all.